Hey everyone, welcome to my show, My So-Called Fabulous. I'm Tiffany Blackman. Welcome everyone, and we are here to talk to you today. I have a couple of guests in my room here with me today. I have a friend, Charity Aughinbaugh. Hello, Charity.
Hello.
She's a friend, been a friend for many years. And I have another friend, Catherine Crudup. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, my goodness. It's so good to see you both. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see us here today. And we are here to talk to some of you, and well, all of you, about a subject that is near and dear to all of our hearts. And it's going back to school and safely and with as much protection as we can. And I'm putting this out here because we have had a number of guests on this show, and I offer a platform for my guest to share the information, the correct information. And also remember, we all are human and we have hearts. I have told you many, many times before, I'm not a physician. I'm not a healthcare worker. God bless the healthcare workers out there. God bless the teachers out there that are putting their lives at risk for our fabulous children. And we're here to bring you information from these two ladies because they do have children. They have careers. Their husbands have careers, and their careers are bringing up their babies too. So we are here to talk to you today about the kids that are really missing this education and what education provides for these children other than knowledge. I am going to allow each guest to really voice their opinions, and I will listen and share with you. So we are going to get started because we are all in this together. Every time I hear that, I say that, I think about that song. We're all in this together. There we go. There's my singing.
There it is.
I didn't know I was going to get singing.
Episode, we have to get your singing.
I got to get the singing out of me, right?
We need to practice a song.
I know we do.
That way we can just break it out together.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed, Paul is a singer, and I would not be a singer, but I try.
You do wonderfully.
Oh, he's so
fabulously.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to talk about this. First of all, we're on this worldwide pandemic that it is going to end. I know it is. Now, I'm saying that because I'm human and it's going to end. And we're going to talk about how you two ladies dealt with COVID since probably, spring break, the second week of March. So tell us, you two have children. Charity, you have 3. Beautiful Libby, that's 9. Margaret Ann, 7. And Claire, that's 4.
Yes.
All right. So you have 3. Your husband is working from the home.
Absolutely.
All right. And Catherine, you have Claire, that's 9. And Campbell, that's 7.
Yes.
Okay. So you are in a different phase of life than I am. All right. So I want to hear, because I remember the back to school. This was the time you were getting their clothes ready and you were getting excited, meeting the teachers. So let's go backwards to March 9th-ish when we were all in that spring break, and tell us what was going on in your minds.
So JT and I and the girls were down in Chenanny Hot Springs near Big Bend, like literally in the middle of nowhere, camping. And on that Thursday of spring break, and I think that is March 8th-ish, we drove into town, the nearest private airstrip that also has internet, and JT's cell phone blew up. And he said, well, family, we are going home today. So we drove 30 minutes back, packed up camp, drove straight through, got back into Fort Worth about 4 o'clock in the morning, and JT was at the office before 6 that morning. Wow. And so at that point, we're like, well, I guess we have an extra week of spring break.
Right.
And so we played at home safely for a week. And then towards the end of the week, we realized, okay, well, looks like we are going to be home for the next bit.
Mm-hmm. Hunker down.
So pretty quickly, I am type A. And so very quickly, we had our schedule and our routine, and we had to stay quiet so JT could work because his clients were not okay with kids and Zoom calls. And so we were quiet from about 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. every single day. And we worked and disciplined, and we were outdoors running and doing our own PE, but we pretty quickly got into routine.
Okay, now school is, right now we're in summer. Mm-hmm. And so Catherine, tell us how your family found out. And
Well, our family had taken a trip to Disney World at the end of January. So our plan was just to kind of be home over spring break and relax. And at that time, when we found out we were going to have an extended spring break, it was kind of like, oh man, we should have maybe gone somewhere because this is getting to be a lot of time at home.
Sure.
And like Charity said, the news came, we're going to stay home longer. And I am not as type A or organized, so our days looked a little different. My husband is in an essential business, so he was still going in to work. So it was my two daughters and I, and we had our schedule with school. I would kind of do lesson plans on Sunday nights when we got the information, and then we'd plan it out through the week. We were very fortunate that my daughter had gotten a laptop for Christmas, so she used that. And then we had our home computer that my other daughter could do some of her studies on, but it very quickly was apparent that that was just not a good fit and didn't work as far as even me being there by their side to try and facilitate their education. I have always treasured teachers and just worshiped the ground that they walked on. After that experience, I cannot say enough amazing things about teachers. They are incredible humans.
Incredible humans and underpaid. Are we all in agreement after this?
Yes.
After we've gone through
no
this?
question.
Absolutely. So the girls and your children have all been they're home all summer. A little bit of we've had some relaxation, I guess, right? I mean, with the kids. I mean, they've had some summer camps or no? Yes.
Yes. So Libby went to Camp Mystic. We fully quarantined for 2 weeks ahead of time, and she had to take her temperature daily. But I was so thankful that she was able to have that experience, just being a normal kid, and it was important for her. Okay. Other than that, the two girls have been home. The other two have been home with me, pretty much the whole time.
We were able to do summer camps too. One of the first summer day camps that opened up. It would have been that last week of school. Obviously, we weren't in school. I signed them up immediately. I don't know. It was something about I could just see in their eyes they needed some activity. They needed other people. Their peers around them. And I will never forget every day picking them up and just the joy on their faces. It was like I got my kids back.
Wow.
And then they did a sleepover camp as well later in the summer.
So, and that went well. All the camps went well.
Yes.
Well, looking at this, and I have a 21-year-old that's a senior at TCU. And so I was with the girls at Cabo, and I had some of her sorority sisters with me. And the day before we left, they turned on the television for some reason, and they were talking about Harvard shutting down, and all the schools on the East Coast, the Upper East Coast, were shutting down. And oh my gosh, we're going to get an extra spring break. Should we not go home? Oh my goodness, they were so excited, so excited. And I looked at those girls. Of course, I graduated TCU, and I said, girls, mark my word, TCU will never ever close down. They will never. Just let's move on. Okay. So, and then we get home and TCU closes down. So don't listen to me. But before she started, she decided, because the internships didn't work out for the summer, obviously, and she had a meltdown right the day before she started her first summer class. And we were talking before the show. Kennedy has ADHD. Was diagnosed her 6th grade year, I believe, and 6th, 7th grade. And just the meltdown of, I can't do this. I can't teach myself upper level classes, senior classes. Oh. She's like, I can't do it. And I said, you know what? You can do whatever you want to do. You can do it. And she made the dean's list this summer. I mean, you can do it. It's not ideal. It's to spend any time during your education at home in a room with your parents teaching, unless you choose to homeschool. And I have friends that make that decision. So times did change for us. So what we're going to move into now, because it's August and it's back to school, and you both have brought this to me, back to school, back to safety. And I want to talk to you about your feelings on, should you let your kids go back to school, or what would be the decision that you two would make? Catherine?
Well, our district was offering a choice for in-person or virtual learning starting on August 17th, which I feel like was the best of both. There are families that live in multi-generational homes that have grandparents that are at risk. There are teachers who do not feel comfortable coming back, which is, of course, understandable. Those are real things, and those families need to stay home. And so the virtual option makes sense. The in-person option, I think, also makes sense for families that are not at risk, who are, following the guidelines and who feel safe going to school. Schools, like you mentioned before, are so much more than education. There are children who depend on being inside of a school building, not just for those academic needs, but for their social, emotional, physical needs to be met. So I think when the district offered that choice, it made sense. They were planning for this. They were going to be prepared to open those doors on the 17th of this month. When that choice was taken away, and we're now at a start date of September 8th for virtual only, I cannot imagine the number of children that are going to be left in unsafe, dangerous situations because they cannot be in that school building. For my family, I also felt comfortable sending them to school. We were not going to choose a virtual option. So that was our plan, was for the girls to go ahead and go back to school.
Do the girls want to go back to school?
Yes, they beg.
They beg.
I was reading the Wall Street Journal article, and there's a picture of kids at desks and colored pencils. And my daughter came up behind me and she said, "Mommy, look at that." I mean, it doesn't seem like it's been that long since they haven't been in school, but that's their world. I mean, we're human beings, and the director of the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, says it's safest for our children to be in school. That's not just how they learn math and reading and writing. They need that.
Right. The social.
Yes.
And the safety.
The safety.
And the safety, right. So I have a question, and I've asked several of my guests. With the school district that you two have your children, do they have computers that are or laptops that are sent home with them? Are you responsible for laptops? How does that work?
So our children are in Fort Worth ISD, and our school specifically has devices that can be sent home with children, enough for every family and possibly enough for every family to have more than one. Like I said, we are very fortunate to have those at our house. So the ones available from the school will go to other families that need them. Fort Worth ISD right now is pulling millions and millions and millions of dollars to try and get these devices to children at lower income schools. They're setting up hotspots. They're having, I think, drive-through, pick up your Chromebook and then take that home. I applaud Fort Worth ISD for that effort. I think it just falls short when a child is being left at home by themselves because their parents have to work to put food on the table. There's no one to help them log in, to facilitate their learning, to bring them a meal. I mean, we talk about these kids that depend on school to be open so that they can be fed. I mean, that's 80% of our 84,000 students in Fort Worth ISD depend on their schools for free or reduced lunches.
80%. Oh, my goodness. I didn't realize that. That is unbelievable. I know. So do you have, so y'all are using computers that you have in your home, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we ended up in the spring buying an extra laptop. And so the two older children and I were sharing two laptops.
Oh my goodness.
Which speaking of logging in, I'm pretty well educated, and yet, however, trying to log one child out and one child back in. I mean, you have to clear windows and macros, and I mean, I don't even.
Right.
We laughed about it. I mean, I spent longer trying to log them in than they did on their schoolwork.
Exactly.
But
More than you want to know about Zoom, right?
Yes.
much more. So,
Yeah.
and so we're planning, I guess, to purchase some sort of laptop or something.
Do
for
all
this
three
fall.
girls need a device?
Well, Claire doesn't. She's just 4,
Right.
and it's hard though too, because all this education has talked about how like try to reduce device time, and for me, I'm like, okay, well, already the girls desperately want to watch a show. And we've gotten back. It's really cheesy, but our family has started watching Little House on the Prairie together.
Oh my!
And my
stars.
mother-in-law made my girls like these little sleeping caps, and they put on their sleeping caps, and we watch as a family together. But I'm like, oh no, there's 1 hour of screen time we just did, and so you think
Right.
about having to add in another 6 hours of school or whatnot on the screen.
That's right. And that is a totally different podcast, but screen time with these children, they are just in front of the computer constantly. And then they want to play games when they're finished, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how you control that? That's another podcast. So, okay. So y'all take me to the back to school, back to safety movement and what's going on. Why? I mean, the schools, tell us more, like, everyone thinks, okay, back to school. We're going to learn. We're going to take 6 classes a day or 7 classes a day, and they're going to be academically challenged and rewarded. So you're saying this movement, it's not about that, right? It includes that, but
Sure. Oh, we're talking about screen time. And I mean, across our district, these children who are isolated in front of a screen for hours a day, I mean, are suffering huge deficits. I mean, the numbers of suicide in our community and young children is increasing. Not to mention, you were asking about just more of why it's so important for kids to be in school, not just academically, is just to meet those, physical and emotional needs. We have seen just a horrific increase of child abuse related deaths in our community. There's actually been less cases reported because teachers are the number one reporters of child abuse. So without those teachers and that safety net, they're not getting the reports, but more children are being injured so severely that they're dying. I mean, we also talked a little bit about, our Fort Worth ISD, about depending on that to open for meals. Fort Worth ISD is actually responsible for tracking homelessness for children who are above the age of 5. So this is not even talking about children 0 to 5. This is homeless children 5 and above through high school. So there are about 2,500 homeless children in Fort Worth ISD. Those are the ones accounted for, and those are the ones that work with a liaison to meet their needs as far as getting clothing and food, and they work their tails off to keep these kids in school. That may mean finding them at a hotel. That may mean finding them on the curb in their mother's car, and making sure that they get in school. And again, these are just the ones that are accounted for. After we never went back in the spring, these liaisons tried to track these children down, and 10% were lost. We did the math.
lost.
Hundreds of children that are unaccounted for. Where are they?
Unbelievable. I'm back. I'm still thinking through the 2,500 homeless children.
Yes.
That's not adults.
Tiffany, I've learned so much. And I think that I've always been kind of a naive person and just kind of taking care of my family and going about and doing the best. When I heard the announcement that school would not be going back in person, not even on the 17th, like Fort Worth ISD promised, but until September 8th, I got this didn't know what to do next, but had to do something, thinking about these kids that completely depend on this system.
You are advocating for these children that we can't find, in these 2,500 children, and the parents. I mean, the parents that they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, so sending them back to school. We recently had a teacher on the show, and I asked her, and I taught high school, and I asked her, do you notice in second grade neglect, or do you abuse at all? And she said, absolutely. It starts out with they're hungry, or they're not clothed properly, or they wear the same clothes all the time, or then the bruising and the emotions. So that is so far-fetched for us. It is. And that you're advocating for the kids that don't have a voice is incredible. I mean, I'm blown away. So what are you doing? What's the solution?
So I feel at this point, it's putting pressure on our board. When is it going to be okay to go back? We have, with a small group of equally concerned citizens and parents and doctors and nurses and social workers, we've reached out to our county judge, and we've asked him, what do our parameters need to be? Attorney General, when our health official made that sweeping order to prophylactically close all schools, the Attorney General came back and said, that is not okay. We cannot do this prophylactically. We need to do this case by case. This is not, and I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's easy, just open the doors and send everyone back in. This is not a one size fits all. I mean, this is something that's going to take creativity and work and preparedness. So our conversation with Judge Whitley was, when can we go back? Where do we need to be? His answer was, our health official says we need to be at 10% infection rate or less. Okay, we're right. At that point, we were at 15. This was September 23rd. I'll have to check my dates exactly. But at this point, according to our superintendent last night at the town hall meeting, we were at about 11 to 12%. He said we need to be somewhere in the single digits.
The infection rate is 11 to 12% right now in Fort Worth.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to back up the
Yes.
23rd of July, right? Not September, so of July.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I
Okay.
was gonna say, I'll
So the
double check.
infection rate is coming down in Fort Worth? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Thank goodness. Okay. All right. So they're waiting still.
So give us metrics. Where do we need to be? What do we need to see? And we didn't really get a clear answer in our town hall meeting last night. That was a Zoom call. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some more distinct parameters. I do know that our health official put out a 23-page document with some guidelines of returning back to school. I think that's probably great, but I don't know how attainable that is going to look. I think, unfortunately, at this moment as our community, it kind of looks like they're not trying to get us back to where we need to be. From speaking with some teachers and hearing teachers call into some of these town hall meetings and Zoom calls, they are not prepared. They don't have PPE. They're asking what they're supposed to do when kids come back in the classroom. So my question is, what's been going on since March? What's our plan? Why would any teacher not be prepared? I mean, I feel like the system is failing, not just our students, but it's so unfair to the teachers.
Do you think that we all are, it seems like every week there's new information.
Yes.
Or there's, remember in the beginning when they're like, don't wear a mask. You don't need a mask. And even my sister that's healthcare professional, she said, don't wear a mask. That was the very first week when I was coming back from Cabo. But there's so many, didn't we all think this was going to be done by August? Do you remember thinking, in August, this isn't going to be a thing in August?
Well, yes. And how about our kids that are like, I can't wait to go back to school. I can't wait to go back to school. And also as parents, it was kind of our hope after going through the spring and having that, time and just realizing that even as two educated women with devices in our home, we were struggling to teach our kids. So that hope that we were going back to school, and then the thought and the education that I've gotten about the children that so heavily depend on being back in school, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
It is.
And that date keeps changing. I know we keep hearing it's a fluid situation. I do think COVID is is here and we live in a different world, but we have to do better for these kids. I mean, we have to keep moving forward and figure out how to meet their needs.
Absolutely. Charity, are you prepared to take, what are you guys going to do in the fall?
Well, that's a funny question. One of my sister-in-law homeschools her children, and she has from the time, he was preschool. And my brother actually sent me early on the Oprah meme that says, you get to homeschool, you get to homeschool, you get to homeschool, like total joke. And I was like, ha ha, that's so funny.
Right.
It's hard because, when Catherine and I were walking up here, we were wearing our mask and laughing about walking up the stairs and how you get out of breath just wearing a mask. And I walk stairs every day in my house, and yet still just the mask just adds a whole nother element. And I hate the idea of my children sitting at their desk and mask, and how it just, a mask, it masks yourself and your smile. And, who is it that said you're never fully dressed without a smile?
Right.
And you can't tell when someone's smiling or not. And so JT and I really had gone back and forth. To me, I do have two brothers that are anesthesiologists and a sister-in-law that's an anesthesiologist. And in fact, two of them are up in New York City, and they run the ICU at the Presbyterian Hospital up there. And so they were on the forefront so early on, and just their experiences. And they early on, they were cautioning our family, wear your mask, be careful. And so to me, it is so important to be careful, and for those that are more vulnerable. And so I don't know. We go back and forth. I had planned on virtual learning. JT said the girls need socialization. And so I don't know. I would like to see, the movement that Catherine has been involved with. It's back to school, back safely. So I would love to see our school district put some creativity into how can we go back safely. What can be done? Is it a week on, a week off, something to make normalcy for our kids?
Absolutely.
Because it has not been. We have pretty much quarantined with two other families on our street, and our kids miss that interaction.
Of course they do.
And and then I talked to you a little bit earlier about I do feel passionate about. JT is on the board of directors of Presbyterian Night Shelter, and I've worked with my church with some Union Gospel Mission kids, and I do feel passionate about those children. And I can go and volunteer one day a week, but how many people of those 2,500 homeless children, can I actually impact?
Exactly. That's a lot. I cannot believe the numbers. And going back to what school is doing for these children, I read, Catherine, in your information that you shared with me, that Cook's Children here in Fort Worth had a 4-month wait list for children to be admitted to their inpatient psychiatric unit.
That's correct. I actually had the opportunity to speak with the head of or she's involved with the care team. It's CAR, and that stands for, I had it in front of me. I'll find it in just a second. I had such a great conversation with her, and my eyes were opened even more on how important detection is for child abuse, sexual abuse of children, that these children on a 4-month wait list were deemed not safe to be in their environment. And this was caught by teachers and educators and in community programs. And now that unit has a very small amount of patients. So what that indicates is that these children are still in these environments that are not safe, that they need to be removed from. But because of these closures and because of the system not being available, they cannot be removed. They don't have these referrals to be taken from their environments and put in Cook Children's Psychiatric Unit.
Unbelievable. I'm amazed that there is a psychiatric unit. I mean, one would think, why would we need that? But we certainly do need that because they're in harm's way. Are they going to the shelters? Are we facilitating the shelters in
Well,
Fort Worth?
my understanding from a friend of mine who's been working with the homeless population in Fort Worth for over 15 years is that 80% of homeless children and families don't actually access the shelters, that they are living in hotels or their car or camping, that they're not actually in the shelters. So my question for our district is meeting the needs of these families. How are they planning on doing that? I mean, they can't just give them a Chromebook and a hotspot. That's not going to
Get
work.
it done. Right.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. And I read that the abuse-related deaths went from an average of 5 to 10 a year to 2 a week in the spring. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. It's there's not really words. That's 2 children dead a week. That shouldn't be.
That shouldn't be.
That shouldn't be.
Not at all. And let's talk about, are we, and I'm watching New York Open because I'm trying to gather my thoughts. I'm watching New York Open, and New York did a fantastic job of shutting down. And I mean, I have to, my hats are off, hats off, but they are starting back to school, if I'm not mistaken.
That is my understanding as well. Yes, that, yes, they are going back to school in person. I think that, like our county, it's going to be a district by district, school by school situation, on doing that safely. But that to me was encouraging that they were in this hotspot and just in such turmoil, but they not only realized the importance and the critical issue of getting children back in school, but that they are being creative and finding ways to do that. The Wall Street Journal that I mentioned earlier was very thorough on going over other countries who have done this well, and who have had very low transmission rates from children to children. They actually studied some families that did have cases of COVID and found that their index patient, which is the first one infected, was not the child, that it was from an adult. And of course, this doesn't discount the safety issues for teachers and other staff being there. But as far as children transmitting it to each other or to adults, those are very, very low.
As moms, I am curious, how afraid are you of contracting COVID as an adult? And how afraid are you with your children? Because we don't want our children. I'll take it. But
Yeah.
what is your feeling on that? Because we have discussed as a family, and my husband, I think my husband thinks he's bulletproof, but he's like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
My child, it's a different story. Now she's an adult. But what are your feelings on that? I mean, because I know someone in my family, someone recently, sick. Another person, not one single symptom. Not one. Same blood type, not one. What are your thoughts as moms? Like, what are your feelings?
I think I have not been overly worried, knowing that if I think that we are not immune compromised, we are healthy. The idea of contracting it, I mean, yeah, sure, there's a little bit a scare to it. But for me, the biggest thing, my grandparents are still alive, and they are 90 years old and 97 years old. And just the idea that I wanted to be able to see them. And so for me, it was very important for us to quarantine and like stay safe so that I could take my kids to see their grandparents.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I feel like my new mantra is fear is a 4-letter word, because I can't tell you the fear that I had when this started. Our daughter was diagnosed with asthma in February, but she in October was hospitalized for a respiratory infection and went into respiratory distress, and spent time at Cook Children's. And so I just knew we were going to get it and she was going to be sick. And I was Clorox wiping every single grocery that I brought home and wouldn't let my husband in the house until he changed. And I'm not sure how the shift happened, but I realized that we couldn't live life like that, and that the risk of her getting COVID compared to what I was doing to my family was, I needed to back off. And so I am cautious and I want to be careful, and I respect that COVID is something new and we don't know a lot about it. And we should be careful. But I think as far as being fearful, I think that just can put you in such a difficult place for all of us.
Right. And the highs and lows of this, when we were in the beginning and we were shut down, and Charity knows my husband is a social butterfly, and he is out and about, and he loves to eat at a restaurant twice daily, and for him to stay home was very trying. Mm-hmm. For us as a couple. We had our daughter living with us and her in school, and it was very difficult. And I was worried about my husband. And he's not afraid. He's just not afraid. And he'd sneak off and go, when we started opening, he'd go down to Dutch's. And I'm like, Greg, stop it. But, I was that person in the beginning. And, we weren't going anywhere. We weren't going to do anything. I would come here. Paul and I are separated. We went through a time with no guest. And then I had to say, you know what? It is what it is. We've got to live our life. And, we got to get back to some sort of normalcy. And I've said that for a while, and I'm saying a new, better than ever normalcy, because our lives we were taking advantage of what we had in our protocol. And, just the number of times of washing your hands now. I mean, think about the number of times you wash your hands compared to some of us prior. So taking advantage, and we will treat disease control differently, I'm quite certain.
Sure.
Certain, absolutely. Okay, so...
Can I add something to that?
You sure
also,
can.
To expound on that further, our new normalcy has gotten better. Like, we have found the silver lining in that we were so overscheduled. I mean, whether it's kids' activities, JT's activities, my activities, family stuff. I mean, we never had a night home alone or a light we were so overscheduled. And I think about there's a Coco Chanel that said, always take one item off before going out. And to me, that's going to be my new mantra. Like, take one thing off your schedule.
Absolutely.
Because we've been so overscheduled, and it has... it's been busy. It's been crazy at times. And my children have sometimes just needed some time apart, and probably needed time apart from me as well. But it has been so nice to just calm down.
It has.
And just take things off our schedule.
And regroup, because we all know, and we're all in many organizations. And we're just, in the word in our pre-March 8th, I am so busy. I am so busy. Oh my goodness, I'm so busy. And we are teaching our children that that's just the way it should be, right? My mom was home all day and made dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us growing up. And if she was alive today, she were alive to be alive today, she would just, y'all needed to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, just because you can do it all doesn't mean necessarily that you need to do it all.
Exactly.
And I've learned that.
Absolutely. That is such a great thing. And there are silver linings in this entire situation. There certainly are. New businesses developed. We have learned that we don't have to go to an office building all the time to accommodate our careers. We certainly don't have to do that. So there is a silver lining for sure. Yeah, I just want it to go away.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Suicide rates in children. When I hear on news or in the media of children that have taken their lives, and who is the people now that are seeing that? I have a friend that her nephew killed himself, and they had the most loving family. No one saw it. Everyone missed it. And these children that are left, and there's not a teacher. And the teacher that was on the show, she sees it. She sees, because she's with these children how many hours a day? We see our kids in the morning to send them off to school. They're with them. She said that she sees these children and their emotional status and where they are. That's another thing that's going on.
Yeah, it's not just the physical abuse, but the
The mental.
The mental, yes. Teachers, bless their souls, catch that too. That something's not right, that child is off, that they're not participating. They have resources at school for children that are struggling. They have school counselors. They have, those resources that you really can't facilitate at home on a Zoom call. And I want to go back because, I lost it again in my notes, but
it happens.
But the woman that I spoke to at Cook Children's said that they're missing so much now because even these well visits or sick visits that they're doing on teledoc or virtual, they can't get a whole picture. They're not one-on-one. She said the amount of sexual abuse that we would catch on these visits because the parents weren't in the room or because we said, is there anything else you want us to know? And they would just break down. She said, we're not catching that because they're on a Zoom call with their abuser, maybe right next to them. And yes, we talked about the screen time and the isolation and how these kids that maybe were already struggling are just spiraling.
Absolutely. It's just devastating. I have a friend that's a pediatrician and she is, you can't, and when she says touch, you can't get a feeling. And when she touches a child and they flinch or
right, all those little signs, yes.
The little signs that are there that they're missing. Absolutely. I understand 1,000%. Yeah. And we'll go back to the COVID is real. It is real. We get it 1,000% because it has touched my family. But are we back to being fearful as moms and, are we at that point of sending back children back and losing children? I asked my husband if our grandchildren went to school, it was back and forth. My husband thinks children should be in school. That is his fault. Mm-hmm. I definitely believe in the choice. If you send these children back to school and they do come home and, like you said, Charity, you spread this to a compromised person. Mm-hmm. Where are you? Are y'all weighing this? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We could debate this all day.
Absolutely. How do you weigh a life? You don't know. You don't want a life lost. Right. You don't want a child's life lost. You don't want a grandparent, who's immunocompromised to be at risk because you send your children to school. This is not easy. It's not just open the doors back up and let them run in. We have to, I would like to say, depend on our school board to make these decisions to keep teachers and students safe and open those doors for the children that need it and for the families that want the choice. I feel like I'm losing confidence in their ability to do that at this point. So it's maybe the community, it's parents speaking up and saying, how can I help you? And maybe not even at your school, at other schools. What resources do you need? Do you need more masks? How can we make you feel safe? How can we get these kids back in the classroom where they do best? Where they're safest, not just for their physical safety, but they have their emotional needs met. They're, they need that.
Absolutely. And you were a part of these town hall meetings. You were listening and
yeah. So these town hall meetings are on Zoom calls, mm-hmm. and you can watch them through a YouTube channel.
Right. And,
yes.
And you're part of this. You're watching and advocating. And
I have been. I never thought I'd be so involved in this. I know, never.
Yeah.
Never. But it's that idea that who's speaking up for those that can't speak for themselves. Who's speaking up for the children that are homeless, who knows how they're getting fed or money or taken care of.
You mentioned the 80%, the 80% that do not, of the homeless that don't access the shelters. And I'm assuming here, I'm just assuming because there's probably rules with the shelters. Am I accurate on that?
That's a great question, but
right.
But that would make sense.
Right.
Checking in and yes.
And then certain shelters, they might have a family unit where families are able to come, or certain shelters have only men or only women or only women and children. And so they fill up. And because, there might be a waiting list for women with children allowed. And then in addition, there are the rules, that no drugs or
Right.
Union Gospel Mission requires you to go to chapel.
Right.
So there are, so whether there's room or whether there's rules that people don't want to follow.
That makes sense, 1,000%. Our sorority, my sorority and Kennedy's Alpha Chi Omega, the women's shelter for Tarrant County, and we've worked so hard and raised money for them. But it's true, they have it's women and children, and they have very strict rules for that facility for sure. And what a great cause. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yes.
yeah. I mean, so that is. If you can do anything, because I'm asking you, what can we do? What can people that are listening right now? Because this is just not in Fort Worth. It's not just in Dallas. It's not just in Austin, which is my 3 cities that I really speak passionately about. It's all over the world. The world, right? I mean,
Yes, it is. I would say reach out to your local community outreach programs that are providing meals, school supplies for at home. Fort Worth ISD is doing some things to get, the technology to students. Volunteer to be a tutor or a teacher. I think there's been this push to open YMCAs and churches and, offer a place for children to come and be safe. Volunteer at those, see how you can help, financially or physically present. I think, look at your school board, look at your school and what their plan is. How are they protecting their teachers? How are they moving to get these kids back in school? This was something I've never paid attention to until this has all happened. And now my eyes are opened and I want to put some pressure on this to go forward and kids to be back in school safely with that facilitated by our representation.
Absolutely. And what is going on, Charity, or both of you, your church? I mean, the church, you're at the Episcopal Church. So what's going on there? I mean, obviously, are they virtual or?
Well, we have opened up to some in-person services.
Have you really?
JT, and I will tell you, I guess maybe we went that first Sunday of spring break before everything was closed down, and we were seated. We were the only ones in our pew, and no one on the pew but front and behind. But other than that, we have not gone back as a family in person.
Right.
So we've been doing that virtual as well.
Exactly. It's amazing what you can do virtually, isn't it? Of course. Yeah. So tell me, Catherine, the timeline. Like, let's walk through this timeline because I want to see where we are. Because I ask people, are you starting back? And they're like, I don't know. I mean, and it's, and again,
it's fluid.
We don't know.
It's fluid. Everything's very fluid.
I know.
Yes, it's changed and gone back. And
right. I was asking my producer, Paul, before, and I said, are you sure you're going? I mean, because some are going and some are not. And again, I'm not aware. So what is the timeline? We started back in July with all this.
So it started in July on the 20th when our superintendent did make the announcement. We believe the best place for a child to learn is in the classroom with a teacher. We also know our current health crisis is making that a challenge. So at that point in time on July 20th, the option was going to be offered for virtual or in-person learning. On the 21st, our Tarrant County health officials said that, in fact, we will not be able to start in person at all, that we will be virtual until at least the 28th of September, which would be the first 6-week mark of the school calendar year, still starting on the 17th. And this is kind of where my education has grown exponentially and maybe more. I think we talked about how I'm not an expert and I don't know how qualified I am, but I am a human and I care about these humans so very much that maybe are so vulnerable and don't have a voice. But our Texas Education Agency said that in-person and virtual should be offered. And if the district was not prepared for that in person, they could have an additional 3 weeks. Whereas our superintendent board made the decision to go 6 weeks. So at this point, when they made that announcement, and my heart dropped for these children who so badly need to be in school, I started communicating with close friends and then more members of the community. And one of my dearest friends said, maybe we should just protest. I think we should just protest this. And so we made a Facebook page, and the numbers started growing, and she created an event and said, we're going to have a protest at Judge Whitley's office on Monday, the 27th. And I'm not sure how it caught his attention, but we worked together on the Friday before the 27th, and she got a phone call. And it was Judge Whitley. And he said, I heard you want to come see me on Monday. She said, yes, we're planning. We would like to just make a physical demonstration of how we feel like the choice should be offered, that in person is essential for 80% of our community. So he said, okay, well, if you would like some time to come in the courtroom and speak to me, I would give you that opportunity. So throughout the next couple of days, we were approached by my friend who has worked with the homeless for 15 years, doctors and nurses and pediatric ER nurses who agreed, like, we've got to have a start date. This sweeping order and these prophylactic closures, and this going back and forth, like, we're not going to do March again. We're not going to do the spring again. We need to have something more in place. So meeting with Judge Glenn Whitley, we felt like he was putting the blame or the pointing the finger back to the superintendents of Fort Worth, HEB, and Arlington, and that they said, we're not ready. Although they had said, we're ready to open, the 17th. We've been preparing since the spring. So they said they weren't ready. And then following suit, the health officials said, we're just going to keep everything closed. And at that time included private, non-religious schools, as well as charter schools. So this was our entire county, not just Fort Worth ISD. And then following that meeting with Judge Whitley, the next day, Attorney General Ken Paxton said, you cannot just do this sweeping order and close all these schools. This needs to be, more of a case-by-case scenario for districts. So after that, private schools were going to open, charter schools were going to open, districts surrounding us, including Dallas, going to open. Fort Worth ISD is still one of the very few that are not opening, not just virtually until the 8th, but that have this reevaluation on October 6th to see if we then, in fact, can open back up.
October. Oh, my goodness. Okay. October 6th.
Which is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, going back to me being a planner, why in the world is there not a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, something to offer a choice? I mean, TC, you can go back and figure out how to do it safely. I mean, maybe there is some more online than the preference would be. However, I mean, nothing brings me more joy than going on my daily walks and seeing kids on the campus.
Absolutely.
And they all have their masks, and some of them not properly worn.
Right.
How the mustache going on.
Right.
But still, I mean, it's just, there's something so wonderful about seeing children or, kids or whatever together. And it's just mind-boggling to me that we are in one of the largest school districts in Texas, and yet there's not a plan in place.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, you have small children, both of you, all right? So 4-year-old, how do you think, okay, so that our older, my daughter can go and do the right thing and socially distance and wear her mask and understand that she has to sit so far apart. The professor may be in a bubble. How do you perceive, if you were a teacher, to go in and to have, 15 to 20 6-year-old to keep them socially distanced. That blows my mind. How can that happen? But it can happen, right? But how do y'all feel about that? Like, the teacher is a teacher, right?
I think that's a great question. I think at this point that should not be the case. I think you have to. And again, when we had the in-person and virtual option, if you had a percentage that were virtual, then you would have smaller classrooms. And I don't know how they would do it. I don't know how you keep 4-year-olds from running and hugging you or their friends or touching. I have a friend who's a preschool teacher, and she said, Catherine, we have to teach these kids not to share. That's what you learn in preschool is to share. Like they can't share. Mm-hmm. This is different. We're in a different world. I think that we are resourceful. I think teachers are the most resourceful humans that we have. I mean, I think that they solve problems in amazing ways. And I think that there's got to be a way for it to be done. I just think it's separating desks, it's smaller classrooms, it's walking one way, down a hall. It's maybe staggering days or staggering times that they would be out on the playground. Some of the schools that are reopening, and then some of the schools I mentioned all over our world that are doing this very successfully have done things like small little pods of maybe 12 kids within the school that they stay together. And then that way, if one of them were to get sick, it wouldn't spread to the whole school. I think this is when we don't just throw our hands up in the air and say it's too big, we can't do it, because it's at the cost of these children. Mm-hmm. I think this is when we say, what do you need? How can we do it? We have to make it happen 100%. Safely.
So we did go as a family to Railhead last weekend. And I mean, is there anything new or different in Railhead in the last 30 years?
No.
However, there is now. They have plexiglass. When you wind around,
mm-hmm.
they have plexiglass, and there's like a one little window that you talk through to put your order in.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I mean, we love Railhead, but for them to be creative and figure out a way to make it happen and make it safe, why?
Right.
You just get creative. You figure something out.
Right. I've had, as a chef myself, but having restaurateurs and chefs on here, they're figuring it out. Mm-hmm. They are figuring it out because, we're dining, we're curbside, whatever your choice is in the dining world or restaurant world, mm-hmm. they are figuring it out. And I agree. I do think, I think it will be. And I hope that by the time we figure this out, we are closing to the end. Mm-hmm. We talked about this in June. Said, I'm not going to talk about COVID anymore on the show. I'm just not going to do it. Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding? I'm doing a whole show on it right now.
Right.
Yeah. So do we just keep pushing through, correct? Mm-hmm. You just keep doing what you're doing. And, do you see the other side at all? Do you see?
I think I see it. It looks a lot different than what we would have hoped for before. I think it's different. I think we live in a different world. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Fear is a 4-letter word. And instead of being fearful, let's go forward. Let's figure out these problems. There's so many smart people. I'm not saying I'm one of them, but there's people that can solve these problems and work towards, not just getting kids back in school, but let's kind of adjust our thinking of mourning what we had and moving forward for something new that's going to look different, but that's okay.
It is okay. 100% okay. Because a lot of things are going to look different now.
Absolutely.
A lot of things are different.
Like Charity and I were talking on the way in here, and I said, I just feel like this is going to be a time in our history that we look back and say, what did we do to these kids? What did we do? Why didn't anybody say anything? And I think for someone who's non-confrontational and usually afraid to say the wrong thing, the wrong thing was not saying anything. And so that's kind of where we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a wonderful thing. I thank you both for being on the front line with your children, of course. And because I do have friends that they say they can't do it. They cannot. They can't teach their children. They don't know how to teach their children. They are not type A. I'm extremely type A, and they don't know how. And then there's the children that don't have even the opportunity.
Right.
And that's who we're missing. And I can't stand these staggering numbers that we're seeing and that you've presented to me today. I just can't believe it. But anyway, we're going to fix this. We're all in this together. You may sing again? No. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, both of you. And we are going to pray that the outcome is quick, as fast as possible. And we're not even going to talk about vaccines. That's a whole different deal. But
whole different podcast next time.
That's right. Because you're a nurse. Absolutely. So everyone, thank you so much for listening and allowing these fabulous guests to share their information and their choices, and to not forget those that are left behind, because we need to take care of each other. We definitely need to do that. Okay. So you girls, you are on social media, and Charity, you are at CF Aughinbaugh. Aughinbaugh.
Correct.
All right. And then Catherine, you're at CatCrudup.
Yes.
That's it. Okay.
That's it.
All right. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Follow along at Tiffany C. Blackman on Instagram. And hey, do me a favor. Go over to my podcast, My So-Called Fabulous. Rate and review. Come on, rate and review. We're trying to get up there in that Apple world. And everyone, take care of each other, take care of yourself, and keep being fabulous.